Nazareth Bilingual School.
Anchor Text. Teach Me How to See by Sharon Rogers. Carmen sighed. Teachers can be such villains sometimes, she thought rebelliously. What a boring homework assignment. A report on stupid painters. She scowled at the books spread out on the table and the laptop computer whose screen showed a page of black type on a gray page. The history books she had looked through and her research were thick and dull. Just like my report will be, she groused to herself. They were packed with facts about the lives of the French Impressionist painters in long paragraphs of text that made Carmen's eyes glaze over. The books did describe some interesting episodes in the painters' lives. Paul Gauguin had dropped everything and traveled across the ocean to settle on a tropical island, where he developed a new artistic style. Vincent van Gogh, haunted by self-doubt, had always turned to his steady and calm brother Theo for help and advice. Carmen was intrigued by these few nuggets in the biographies she read, but the dull descriptions of the artist's work made her yawn. The words on the page did not help her form mental images of the actual paintings. I can't understand why anyone ever wanted to see this art, she thought. Who cares about pictures of trees and fields or bowls of fruit? It's all so ordinary. Then she noticed a narrow book with a picture on its cover. Famous Paintings for Young People. Curiously, she opened the book and found herself looking not at pages of text alone, but at pictures. The pictures on the first pages were of vegetables and fruit. The heading at the top of the page said, Still Life. Carmen had read enough to know that a still life painting showed objects rather than buildings, animals, or people. Most often a still life showed flowers or fruits or dishes or something like that. One still life picture showed a bunch of onions on a table. The shapes of the onions as they tumbled across the table and their warm reddish gold color against the white napkin made them look so real that she wanted to reach into the book and touch them. She could almost feel their papery skins and smell the sharp scent. I am actually starting to see why people like onions, she thought. They look surprisingly tasty. The second picture was also a still life, but it was totally different from the first. This one showed a white bowl full of apples, with a lemon and some other fruits on the table. Look how the color glows, Carmen thought. Real apples never look like that. There must have been afternoon sun coming in the window when he painted these. Well, the onions in Renoir's painting looked real. The apples in Cézanne's picture looked almost like painted wood. Carmen had never thought of apples and lemons looking like that. She jumped up, ran to the kitchen, and stared at a big blue bowl of apples and pears on the counter. As she gazed at the fruit, she could see why Cézanne had painted the apples almost as if they were child's toys. Carmen pondered this as she returned to the study and sat back down at the table. I guess now I see why paintings are important, she thought. They don't just show you onions or apples. They show you what Renoir thought about onions. They show you how Cézanne saw an apple. A painting is all about the artist's point of view. Carmen turned the page to see more. Landscapes, read the heading at the top of the page. This time, Carmen found herself looking at pictures of outdoor views instead of food on a table. The first picture showed a large country house in the south of France. I've never seen a view like this, she thought. Carmen knew the sun must have been shining brightly against the house when Cézanne painted this scene. It made the house glow a beautiful orange red. She also couldn't take her eyes off the blue sky peeking through the green of the trees. The second landscape was a total contrast to the first. While Cézanne's view was partly blocked by the dark green trees, Gauguin's view was much more open and airy. Carmen had never visited the South Pacific, but she had read that Gauguin had spent many years there. What brilliant colors, she thought, even brighter and hotter than the colors Cézanne saw in the south of France. It must be very hot in Tahiti, and the sun must be brighter than bright. That's why the rocks look pink, and the grass looks yellow. The sky must have been incredibly blue when Gauguin painted this scene. Carmen turned the page of the book and found a pair of pictures that showed basically the same thing, a vase of flowers on a table, but showed it so differently. If I saw these flowers in the market, she thought, they would look much more alike. Even though they are different types of flowers and different colors, I would still see them in the same way. But look how Van Gogh saw his yellow sunflowers, and how Renoir saw his bouquet. She studied the paintings closely. The sunflowers were huge and bold in color. The jug that held them and the table below them echoed the gold color of the flowers themselves. The flowers seemed to have been tossed into the jug without any care for how they were arranged. Some stood straight up, others drooped. The jug itself was roughly shaped. Carmen thought it looked like her sister Veronica's efforts in pottery class. The size and bulk of the jug matched the strength of the flowers. Renoir's vase of flowers provided a complete contrast. His flowers were small ones, and white and pale yellow, with a few spots of blue and brilliant red. They looked wispy and delicate, as if a puff of wind would blow them away. They seemed quiet and polite. They whispered where Van Gogh's sunflowers shouted. I guess it all depends on what kind of room you put flowers in, thought Carmen, and who you give them to. A sick person in a hospital would probably love Van Gogh's flowers because they are so bright and positive. But if you had a headache, you might like the Renoir flowers better because they are soothing. They don't seem to shout at you. Up until this moment, Carmen had thought that flowers were just flowers. She liked them, but had never really looked at them closely. She had never noticed that all flowers have different personalities. I'll never take a vase of flowers for granted again, that's for sure, she thought, as she turned the page of the book. Carmen next found herself looking at pictures of buildings along a waterway. She recognized the orange-red colors of southern France from the other painting by Cézanne. Once again, Carmen marveled at the intense blue of the water, which stood out sharply against the warm colors of the cluster of buildings on the edge of the bay. The second image also showed buildings and water, but there the resemblance ended. Renoir's painting of a bridge was bathed in white sunlight, and its colors were blue and pink and white and green. Renoir's blue doesn't look anything like Cézanne's, thought Carmen. She looked from one painting to the other, noticing that Cézanne's blue was more green, and Renoir's more purple. The water under the bridge looked so real. I feel as if I could dip my hand into it, she thought, and I can almost hear the motor of the barge chugging away as it goes down the river. Carmen thumbed through the book again, studying for a second time all the paintings that she liked best. One thing's for sure, she thought, my report will feature lots of images. After all, there wasn't any sense in talking to the class about a painter unless she could show that painter's work. Assuming that her classmates were anything like herself, they would never understand why Renoir or Cézanne were important unless they could see what these artists had painted. Carmen launched into her writing with new energy. Her hands flew over the keyboard as she wrote her paper. The real record of a painter's life is there on his canvases, she wrote. It doesn't matter so much when Renoir or Cézanne was born, or where either of them lived, or when they got married. What really matters is the way their paintings can teach us how to see. As Carmen read over her finished report, she smiled. She looked again at the paintings in the book, making notes of all the images she would search for online to include in her report. Carmen gave famous paintings for young people a little pat as she put it down. Illustrations really make a difference, she thought. They make you see things in a whole new